Nancy's dad broke his arm, and then that triggered his cardio stuff. And so she's getting talk to her. I'm not using Teams. Just Teams. Everybody. Yeah, no one's ever been able to tell us what they're doing. The reality is Teams is free if you're on the 365, so your IT department takes it for this one. Well, hello there. How are you? Yeah, I can imagine. Absolutely.
Yeah, but under the circumstances, I guess we have a plan, so that's good.
When did they think you'd be over? That's what they said.
You know, I've probably been in the hospital for a few more days, and then he tried to take, he broke his arm on Thursday night. We tried to take care of him for 3 nights. It just was so difficult, and then he started having heart issues, and the heart is,
Yeah.
in the hospital. Now they have that all under control, and I guess I resigned myself that, he's got to go into rehab. And I watch even in the hospital how they move him, and such as a pretty severe break. And so, anyways, I've got a good caseworker that's, we've identified a number of rehabs kind of around where, like Rochester Hills. They'll see about that availability. We'll have to back him in a, from here to there, so.
Okay. I'm tired just listening to it, so.
Yeah.
All right.
So, it's nice to join you guys and feel normal for.
A little bit here, as normal as we are. Okay. All right. So you're obviously right in front of me. I'm going to leave this. If you can't hear, let me know, and I will bend the laptop down so the microphone is flatter. But you'll be staring at the ceiling if I do that. So maybe that's better than my face. So if we do that.
I'll just follow along with the, I have the presentations pulled up in front of me.
Okay, cool. Okay, well then we shall begin. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024 Board of Education Workshop. We have most of us here in person and one person remote. We begin with public communication. I do not have any. Please say. Yeah, okay, so good there. That takes us to the teaching and learning update.
Look at your so we wanted to just give a summary. We have been doing so the past couple of years of summer professional learning. We have so many staff engaged over the summer. I think what's important to note is that not everything could possibly be captured here. People go to many, many different things, but we tried to kind of capture some of the highlights. So just a reminder that we support a lot of work over the summer. It aligns with our goal pillar and the capacity of our staff. These are some of the things that we'll dig into. I won't read the list, but just some of the highlights. So one of the things that we are excited about sharing is that we had 3 of our secondary administrators and 2 of our CIS attended the UDL National Conference. And this really aligns with our secondary work that we've been talking about in terms of MTSS and really kind of shoring up Tier 1 instruction. And so, yes, curriculum instruction specialist, so the folks on my team. Acronym, that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was guessing that's what it was, but I was just looking at everything.
And UDL stands for Universal Design for Learning. But it's a way about thinking about our instruction rather than making, let's say you had a student with a special need, rather than making one adjustment, you plan that all students have variance, so you're planning your instruction for variance. So the idea is that everybody, gets what they need in your classroom. So, they brought back that was very important learning, that was, I would say, new learning for many folks, but it also affirmed a lot of, what we've been talking about here, which is great.
I think one of the things that this particular learning has done is it's formalized the very informal conversations that have been happening around universal supports for students. So, for example, something like preferential seating, it's kind of pushed the conversation from, it shouldn't be about preferential seating being the front of the classroom. It should be about how are we decentralized, or how are we defronting our classrooms with our flexible furniture so that every child is engaged in the learning that we're doing. But right now, our secondary folks might say preferential seating. And so our folks who went to this universal design for learning they're helping us formalize what that looks like and helping to push those conversations in a very positive direction.
Next, we also had a great kickoff for our admin team. We focused a lot on new calendar. We talked and did a lot of kind of review of how the process went and how it was really an opportunity to hear from our community. And then also talked about the opportunities in collaboration and planning about what might it look like to support staff and students about their education about holidays that are new to, that we are newly observing. So really being thoughtful and developing a plan, like maybe that's something that they use their monthly collaboration around, you know, if there is an observance coming up to really do some learning so that they can support students and staff in a more culturally responsive way. I don't know if there's anything Christine to add to that, but it was,
Yeah, I think Chantel's perspective was really helpful in that we're kind of couching this in sort of toolkits for our admin team so that when there's a holiday observance or an observance coming up, that our folks are situated and prepared to be able to communicate properly and to work with the teachers and the families as well. So just kind of as in a timely way as things come up, just being able to situate our folks accordingly.
Give us an example, what does that mean, being situated?
yes. So, for example, if a student is observing a holiday, you want to say, oh, explain to the whole class what, like do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
So, you know, have like different ways to discuss the holidays within the classroom, you know, even sharing of resources. So,
How does that work?
I was just gonna say also talking about ways, or that was the first time our administrators had an opportunity to interact with what we're calling observances. And so what support do they need from us about tests and assignments and what clarity do they need? So
what does it
everybody's
mean to
treating-
observe
what does it mean
something?
to observe something very
we wanted them to
consistent?
have some interaction with that prior to us just saying.
Yeah, that's really important.
So.
So how does that work, especially for elementary and middle school kids? One, because they try to not be doing something different than the rest of the people. They want to assimilate as much more. They probably don't want to talk. How do we make sure that they understand that?
Well, I think it's not about like pointing out students that are celebrating a holiday necessarily. It's more about education about what the holiday means.
Explain it to the
There's
teacher.
lots of,
Why not?
there's lots of children's books in this case, there's lots of children's books that support,
So do we kind of reach out to experts in the areas, or people who observe it, and then the teacher kind of help them out as well? Is that what you're thinking?
yeah, so Chantel and Evan are actually collaborating on this project with the idea of identifying even like guest speakers who would be willing, or even to create different videos, you know, and then also staff or families that would like to talk about how they celebrate a holiday, giving them an opportunity to do so. So they're kind of pulling together those resources.
I'm asking these questions because
Yeah.
knowing my kids, most of the time, we're trying to teach them, but they probably don't even know a lot of these things
Sure.
because they live in a world which is not common to have these holidays celebrated, so that's why.
Yeah. Also too, we had a great conversation recognizing not every family celebrates
Exactly.
Diwali the same way or Eid the same way. So recognizing that each family is different and you can't make assumptions about what families do or don't do. So.
But that toolkit is from teaching, learning to the
Yes.
teaching staff.
Correct.
It's not,
Yes.
it's so the teachers understand
Yes.
and have an idea of how they incorporate it. It's not
Yes.
applied to kids, from what I hear, from what you say.
Okay,
Mhm.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So it's
And our
keeping
principals
everybody.
meetings,
Yeah,
Mhm.
right, our leadership, yeah, classroom leadership, building
Yeah.
leadership.
Okay. Thank you, yeah.
I just like that idea of saying, because we know what the service means. So that we don't have a teacher saying, well, service means you don't have an assignment, another teacher saying, no, it doesn't mean that at all, right?
Right.
It's like if we have a common language
Right.
and expectation, then we'll have a common experience for kids.
Yep, and it brought up a lot of good conversation. For example, if you say no tests on that day, well, then are all the tests 2 days later and they all land on the same
Right.
day? So just, there's a lot of thought that they, considerations that maybe I would not have thought of, or, our team would have thought of that they were bringing to the table that those need to be
Yeah.
ironed out, so. So we also had our continuation of our TSD literacy project, so over 80 teachers. I think we had also two, at our preschool, wasn't it 15 from our preschool as well. So really incredible, learning experience again. It was really about how we sustain the workshop model, embedding student choice, student feedback, and responsive teaching. They were able to do, a lot of built-in choice sessions this year, which we got really good feedback on as well. We offered an optional.
What does that mean? Built-in choice for the teachers or
Yes, so
how
like
to teach
within,
choice?
so
Okay.
within, I'm so sorry. So within the workshops that were offered, our staff developers broke up and offered different choice
Oh, okay.
sessions across
Okay.
the day. So it wasn't, so a K2 teacher could have, or a second grade teacher could have been learning something with a seventh grade teacher, because they chose that choice session. We also had, obviously, half of our elementary buildings are getting furniture. We have, Baker Middle School who got furniture this year, so we had a, NIMU, sorry. And we had a optional, come join us to think about future ready learning environment session. This was a half-day session, and we had, 55 folks come. What was nice is it was really rooted in the early adopter folks, so the people that piloted, furniture this past year. I did want to say, I thought there was a picture that I wanted to point out, so you can see, I apologize, I guess they're kind of big on the screen, but, you can see they were in the classroom of someone who had the furniture already set up, so they were able to kind of move things around. Marie's able to, kind of demonstrate different things. So even the teachers, if they came and had not seen it, they were seeing, oh, this is how you raise and lower a table, this is how you move this piece. So they were able to kind of play.
Yeah, just to add, and I was sharing with Matt, over dinner, one of the things I think I'm most proud of with the teaching and learning team is the learning that has occurred. It's not just buying new tables and just being able to really declutter the environment and how much learning has occurred over time with the pilot group. In some cases, I feel like our buildings look like they've got its square footage because the teachers have removed so many things, and it looks, they really look outstanding. So just kudos to our staff who's done so much work. Just again, not replacing chairs, it's really about their environment as a whole. The buildings look phenomenal, so I look forward to all being able to see those.
But even like I was in Athens and seeing they're getting the
The
whole, it's like square footage,
Yeah.
it's so much better.
Yeah, much better.
Like even with the furniture is a million times better than it was, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they got the piloted furniture from classrooms and.
They got the 3-4 furniture that was purchased 7 or 8 years ago, 4 or 5 years, furniture purchased like 7 or 8 years ago. So that furniture was pulled out of the 6 elementaries, put together, and then first we furnished Smith, and we completely did Smith, and then we had enough to do probably about half of Athens. So then next summer we'll be able to do the rest of Athens, and then we'll be able to use some of that good furniture in other spots.
So they're big enough for customers?
Yeah, they're standard size.
The fourth and
grade
fifth
is standard size.
They use this for old things.
So to Chris's point, so some of the learning has been not just about how you utilize furniture, but how the space is organized. So, part of the teacher's learning was just the value of that space in the classroom. So one thing you might notice if you're visiting any classrooms this year is that, many of our teachers that, especially the ones that, piloted last year, they have really gotten rid of a lot of furniture. And what that has caused is prompting them to think about storage and prompting them to think about, just the spaces that students can access in their rooms. That has resulted in many dumpsters of stuff being, unloaded out of classrooms, and what that means.
Like personal stuff, like beanbag chairs or things like.
Personal stuff,
Okay.
couches,
Things like old PTA donated stuff that they've had forever, that, you know, the PTA gave them once and 10 years ago.
Well, I'm thinking in some cases that when I think about classrooms I've been in, it's like trying to take something that feels very institutionalized and making it feel more personal. Now I don't need to do that because the furniture itself doesn't look institutionalized, it's flexible. So I don't need to put lipstick on that pin, right? I mean, so-
Deciding.
Okay, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Items better.
Yeah, but I think at an elementary level, that's, and I know I mentioned it before, I think it's important. I remember when my kids first started going to elementary school, walking into some of the classrooms, and there's things off of the ceiling, on the walls, everywhere, and I kept thinking, like, how is a 5 or 6 year old concentrate? I mean, because it's too many
Yes.
areas.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so we also welcomed new teachers this year. I think it ended up being around 20.
Small class,
Yeah, it was a small cohort this year. But they get 4 days of professional learning. They have an opportunity to hear from every department. So they hear from our employee services department, they hear from our technology department, teaching and learning
You
department.
don't see Dr. Wachowski on this famous bus tour.
Yeah.
but
Right.
The
he
bus
runs
tour
it.
is always a highlight. Actually, the highlight for me on the bus tour this year is our auto shop teacher is a longtime Troy resident. And he was like fact checking. All things
Oh,
Troy.
no.
It's cold weather, it's a very good
Really
picture, yeah.
So, yeah, that was definitely a highlight, but,
That's fun.
yes. Okay, and then, many of you were actually able to join us for this. We had our staff welcome back learning. Some of you were able to hear our keynote speaker, Liz Conrock. At elementary, we had choice sessions. One of them was culturally responsive teaching in the calendar. That was really well attended. They were all rooted in our big rocks. So there was a furniture option, there was some math intervention options. So obviously we were planning to try to match what's the big work we're doing this year and then provide choice for teachers there. And then our secondary team had an opportunity to hear from Dr. Stephen Seed from Oakland Schools. He really gave a nice overview about what MTSS can look like at the secondary level, in particular bringing in MTE's plan in terms of MTSS and parts like that. And then they also had department time, so time to be in PLCs, whether with professional learning communities, whether with their grade level team, or with their department team, so.
So-
It was something for everyone.
Where do you feel we're at with MTSS deployment at the secondary level?
I think
I know we're early
yeah,
on, right, but
I
what's
think
your
it's
sense?
a much more holistic understanding of the structure of, you know, what needs to take place, as well as some really strong teams who are supporting the foundational aspects of MTSS. So as we rolled into this year, we implemented new universal supports across all of our secondary buildings. So Larson had historically had some that were published and used and kind of tried and true at Larson. And Athens dabbled a little bit, and so over the course of last spring, all 8 of the secondary administrators worked with their department heads through what those were, and talked about, are these something that we can do and take on? And it's a small step, but it's a step in the right direction for all of our teachers, our classroom teachers, to commit to our community. These are some supports that we provide for all kids, regardless of if you have a 504 or not, or an IEP or not. So some examples of that.
I was gonna say, can you give some examples?
Some examples of that include use of the Academic Resource Center, or the Academic Support Center, regardless of whether you have a plan that says you get to access that. And so that was a big deal. And then also in doing that, we put an Academic Support Center in all 4 of our middle schools. They hadn't had one before. So just
Okay.
really like an alternate quiet space for students to be able to take assessments and be able to take additional time if they need it. We've asked one of the
And
universities.
sorry, you said that's all secondary buildings now?
All secondary buildings now, yep.
What is that, like a space separate?
It's like a classroom
Like a
space.
tutoring
It's not a tutoring center, but it is a place where you can go to have like an alternative setting to take an assessment, or maybe you need more time. Maybe there's a quiz that, everyone's done with 15 minutes and you need some more time, you can go and complete your work at the academic support center.
Do they still have to schedule their time, or are they allowed, like if everybody else is finished and I haven't finished, can the teacher just send me, or do I need to know ahead of time when I'm going to be?
It depends on, so they're working through what that looks like at the levels, it's a little bit different, it's brand new at the middle school, so they're trying to figure out like what that ebb and flow is going to look like. The biggest concern with scheduling time is just capacity.
Oh.
So right, like at Troy High in Athens, there's one classroom. Troy High uses their lecture room for it, so they actually have quite a bit of space if they need it, but we have, and Athens is a classroom that can fit about 30 kiddos. So it's really about that, that's the plan ahead part, but at the middle, because it's new, it can be more of a drop-in, so they're working through what that looks like together.
Because I know that's been some of the.
Sure. Yeah. So that's one of them. We talked a little bit about preferential seating. I'm trying to think, Natalie, there's 9 of them, and I'm thinking on the other ones.
So if there's a large project, for example, you would chunk the project into like smaller deadlines. And to Christine's point, I think what is different, because many of these things aren't in place in many of our classrooms, but it makes it so that now it's guaranteed that they are.
Right.
But also too, it's not, oh, you need more time, okay, you go over here, in this case, they are going to a but it's that it's open to people, anyone who needs it.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be, that's.
I don't have to point to a form.
Yes, so like, the example I like is, for example, kids who, could benefit from using, from listening to a written piece as opposed to,
Yeah.
reading it. There's lots of options that do that for you automatically through technology now, but anyone should have the option to do that. So it doesn't have to be, if you have a reading difficulty, you can do this. It's text to speech.
It doesn't have to be
it's
defined by.
available, right. So that's the universal part, is it should be, the goal is that kids are making choices about how they can learn better, and the teacher is, providing those options, but then the kids are figuring out what is best for their own learning.
Can you send us the list just when you get a
Yeah,
chance?
sure.
Just
It should be in
curious.
every secondary syllabus, but I can send it to you. I will tell you, I think what's important just for you to know, because this is a lengthy process, right? This is
Yeah.
something that we would love to change tomorrow.
Well, that's why I was asking you, where do you think
Right.
you are? Because I know we're at the beginning stages.
Well, but I do think like we've been very intentional in kind of the table setting of what's been happening. So if we think about last year, we worked very closely with Solution Tree and David Pillar, who came in to build the common understanding across our secondary administrators around professional learning communities and the power of collaboration across our teacher teams to be able to support students. And their robust understanding, as it's been growing, made it very clear that the professional learning communities are the engine that drive our MTSS, right? It's very difficult to have an MTSS structure that doesn't have a collaborative team behind it. So we have our principals who have learned that, and then we worked through negotiations to now have professional learning community time every week at the secondary. We have 25 minutes twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, where our professional learning communities are coming together at our middle schools and our high schools. So that's every week. So that's time that just didn't exist before. And so we built in, so we trained our principals, we built in this time, and this year we're extending our learning with Solution Tree to bring in all of our teacher leaders at our secondary, so our department heads and our teacher leaders who are working in the building to lead that MTSS. So we're putting that in place with some universal support. So we're slowly building this to try and have a really robust foundation.
I was gonna say,
And
that's
how it-
foundation,
right,
those are all
right.
foundational moves.
Right, and I think, to Christine's point, the barriers we were running into in previous work with MTSS was, if teachers aren't clear about what should the students learn, how will we measure if they've learned it, like those are the questions that teachers ask during collaboration time. And that's the hallmark of MTSS, so you have to be clear on what standards they're supposed to master, what we're going to do when we don't master them, so those are, one had to precede the other. These are different things.
Abby, I had a question. You mentioned about, for example, if you had difficulty reading or had struggled reading, and you could use the listening devices and all, and it's available for everybody. As human beings, we're amazing, we want to take the easy way out. struggle through and be better and learn and all of that, how do we address that? When
Well,
you have those options?
yeah, I think we have to think about, you know, what the students' needs are. Also to think about what's the purpose of the assignment. You know, is the reading, is the most important goal of the reading that they get the information? Is it a reading assignment? So is the goal that they work on their decoding, their comprehension, and putting kind of all those pieces together? So I think it just kind of, the answer is it kind of depends.
So the choices are only available based on what it is that you're trying to get them to learn, is that what you're saying?
No, they should, on this list, they're pretty universal.
So then
Yeah.
how do you make sure that they're not taking the easy way out and that they're actually, I'm
But these-
struggling through our learning?
To clarify, these are accommodations for secondary students
Mhm.
more than,
Right.
so.
So we've transitioned from learning to read to reading to learn, right, at that secondary level. And so I think just to emphasize, you know, what is the outcome of the assignment? So if we're thinking about a history text, right, the goal of a history text is to gather the information that's in there. Now, if I'm in an AP literature course and I've been assigned a close reading assignment, me listening to the book on tape while I'm reading it as an opportunity for me to gain a better understanding of what's happening before I do my close reading analysis isn't necessarily giving me the easy way out of the reading analysis. I still have to go back and be able to work through, what did I see here? Why did it make me think that? And provide my defense of my position. So I think your question is exactly the conversations we're having with some of our staff who feel like, well, wait a second, isn't that need something that, you know, does that cheapen the assignment or does that make it less rigorous if we're doing that? And it provides us with an opportunity to just reflect on what is the outcome of that assignment that we're hoping for, and what are we testing for? And so it's a great question.
That's good. It's clear, you can be very purposeful when you lay out the assignment as the teacher. Why am I doing this assignment?
Right.
Right? It can't just be an obvious assignment or an automatic thing. It's like, okay, what is my expected output? I think that's a really valuable exercise for a teacher to go through.
Right.
I feel like it will get rid of busy work.
Right.
Because now
Right.
there's not an assignment that I can just take the easy way out, but it's how do I make sure that the assignment's actually about the learning.
So the teachers are purposeful when it is available versus when it is not, that's what I mean.
And most of the time it's available at secondary, right? There's an audio version of just about everything that.
Oh, is that? I did not know that. Okay. Good to know.
What, what's the general chatter about this, the speaker?
And very positive, yeah, yeah.
The one slide she had where she said the difference between all are welcome versus I designed this just for you.
Right.
That has been burned
That's a
in my brain.
powerful-
And that's, something to think about as
Yeah.
we're looking at what it really means to be inclusive.
Mhm.
But I wondered whether, and I loved her line, she said, I know what it's like I don't want to pay attention to someone who's giving advice to a teacher unless they're a teacher.
Yeah.
They can do it. So I was hoping that there was good reception to her.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
didn't know what
She
kind of
had,
feedback you heard.
people have shared back with me a lot of like her one-liners that had stuck with them. One of the things that I know got reiterated in the next day session and came up was this idea that, don't bog yourself down with bias. Recognize it's a shortcut. And why would we take a shortcut? We want to get to know every kid. So like don't, and I'm not saying her one line, but how she explained it, it resonated with a lot of teachers. Why would we want to take a shortcut? We would want to get to know every student and understand what their needs and their passions are. So I know that resonated with people a lot. Another thing actually that teachers shared resonated was she kind of gave that continuum. I don't know if you can recall the slide, but she gave a continuum about how sometimes elementary folks can be intimidated by how do you talk about some of those subjects with younger children. And so, for example, how she said, you might not be talking about consent in second grade, but you certainly can talk about boundaries with your own body. So, like, really that understanding there's a continuum to those topics. I know that resonated.
One of the things, I think Alex did such a nice job with this in the afternoon of this particular day that's up here, kind of unpacks their background and things like that, so that was really well received. Principals kind of had a menu of options that were inspired by Liz's message, and so they kind of dovetailed off of that for the afternoon. So it's, again, we didn't talk about that necessarily, but just to be able to cascade her message, and that's sort of a theme that they heard throughout the day, so it's great.
I think the last slide is just a couple pictures of different things across the week. I don't know what that's doing. Kind of got layered over. But some of our principals, they did have.
Oh, skipping, oh, gotcha.
Yeah, not sure. But some of our principals actually did go to some of the new playground pieces to experiment and to see and to think about opportunities for kids. So was this one at Troy Union?
That's true, you did, my playground's done.
I know. Where is it?
Yes.
Done that, so that's what you get.
It's really great when it's done. So, no, it was a great summer in terms of professional learning. I think there's lots of hands that, really make this work, so we just wanted to showcase that. Great to see.
Good work. Did a lot of foundational work.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that's not in here that we should mention is we had several of our buildings go through restorative practices training, and that will be throughout the year for the rest of our buildings. So we everyone will have it. Yeah, so by the end of the year, everyone will have gone through that training. So we'll talk more about
The
that
sessions, right, different
Yeah.
skills that they were able to do there now in October, and so
Yeah.
that'll be great for, I know that was of interest of the boards, and that'll be something that we've ensured everyone has.
So then, will it be by the end of October, or will it be by the end of the school year?
I think on the end of the school, yes.
Okay.
In totality, but
Okay.
those other series, so.
And
It's
that's,
2 full days.
that's
right.
every, say that again, is every.
Every building
Every
will have
building.
a team.
A team,
Right.
okay.
So those leadership team that's trained, so. the
And how big are the teams? Wow. are they-
Very-
3, 5.
Okay.
I think smaller, their smaller buildings, bigger.
So
We get
then-
elementary.
Then next year, I assume then there'll be a cascade across the, okay.
What's nice is both Casey and Chantel who are trained the trainer.
Yep, and
So-
then.
and so we have three of our administrators are the highest level of restorative training practices, which means they can train people to train others. So once we can get this cohort, we'll be able to offer that opportunity too.
Great.
Thank you so much.
How about communication strategy?
Sure.
So this kind of, I'll give a preface to this stemmed out of conversation that I had with Rich, which is I said, I want to make sure that we understand what is it, do we have a general approach to communication? Making sure that if we can identify a particular event that's coming up, so for instance, curriculum change, to say, okay, what is the timetable? What are the general tools we're going to use? So I wanted to give Kendra a chance to kind of walk through what's your general strategy, and what are the tactics she's going to typically use, and if she's got different tactics for different types of events, we can talk about that. So I noticed when I went through your deck that she's got a couple of case studies, and I thought that was helpful to show you're not always going to do the same thing for different events, but I thought it was a chance for us to kind of think about what are all the tools in our toolkit, and then how does our director of communications typically think about those things when we're playing lessons. There's your intro. Without saying anything you're going to say.
Five slides
And,
of us.
yeah, 5 slides of us.
So, generally, when it comes to communications, where we look at, what are we trying to communicate? So, is it, what's the goal of the communication, right? Are we trying to create awareness for a program? Are we looking to attract new families? Are we looking to launch something? What are we trying to do? What is the goal? And then we look at who's the audience? Who do we want to reach out? Is it current families? Is it new families? Is it legislative, right? Lots of different audiences. And then we try to look at, I like this, must, should, could, want, and wish, right? Here's the things we must do, we have to do, we know we have to do. Here are things we should do, here are things we could do, if we want, right? We wish to do, and not all of them will get done, maybe. It depends on how much time and how much energy and effort and whatnot the team has. But we kind of go through that and make a plan based on those things. going to be a big rock for many years. But, right, are we talking about finances, are we talking about school culture, right? What are we trying to do for the year? And then what supports that plan? Is it, what sort of data are we looking at? Are there, is there a specific survey that we've done or that we'd like to do? Is there enrollment numbers? What are we looking at to determine that? And then once you kind of put the plan in place and start moving forward with the plan, I always try to get feedback on it and revise it, right? So I'm one of those that I don't think I have it right and know everything, so, right, if I do something, you said, "Ooh, we don't like that, let's pivot and shift and make a change and sort of a living, breathing thing.
This is, go back, one of the things I like about this is a really big construct. I would love, anytime we have a major initiative, for you to pop into a workshop with a one pager, say, this is the communication plan for this event, so that we understand. So oftentimes we're like, well, how are we communicating that? And it's like, and I laugh with Rich because I go, I know she's got it planned out. But it's helpful for us to understand what is the strategy, what is the cadence of the communications. And it's as simple as this, right? You've got those 6 or 7 categories, and if you just fill in the bullet point is, here's what we're gonna do under that category for this event.
Sure.
That would be really helpful for the board to see.
And then the question, there's a big rocks that you talk about, big rocks, is that something you set as an administrator?
We do.
And you share it?
So the cabinet team, kind of every year, we go to our cabinet
For sure.
It's just,
And-
through our strategic plan.
It's modeled, we call it the big rocks, but it's
Yeah.
basically.
That's why
No.
it's not called that
Look,
way.
No, we
Yeah,
called it
you
Big
know,
Rocks.
it's the big rocks, it was an email.
It's July. When did you guys have your thing, July?
July.
So he sent it to all of us right after that. Yeah.
So budget, and initiative, that was last year, so we talked about some in our budget.
Talking about all the same things, but.
Basically,
rocks.
that's what our big initiatives that we need support from one another in cabinet to kind of.
Like a review,
It's-
PSS.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
really good
Yeah.
for us to talk, right, as a team, call them off-site, and when we can just focus on some of them and work together as a team, right? What do we need from, right, Chris's elementary folks, what do we need from Christine, what do we need from Matthew, what do we need from, what, right? What are the different components, because all of them have, will be very important, so it's a really good time for us.
And I assume this is under the philosophy of doing fewer things
Yes.
extremely well.
Right.
Right,
exactly.
so it's like, let's stop doing 45 initiatives,
And not
we're gonna
getting
tackle
caught in so
it.
many whirlwind items, we
Right.
wanna make sure we're focused on the bigger picture.
And recognizing that
Vision.
your 4 is probably all you can hope to get done.
Right.
Is that kind of, I wasn't in that meeting, but
Right.
I can almost hear them saying
Right,
that.
exactly.
Okay.
But I think that goes to the must should could want wish, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay,
But
but
where
this
is
is a,
this?
this is a
Right.
pebble, so that might be
Yeah.
a longer wish as
Well,
opposed to.
and
a
I'll get
wish.
people that will come to me with things that will say, oh, we really
You
need to
should
be
do
doing
this.
this, we should be doing this, we should be doing this, and I'll say, well, is it one of the big rocks that we're focused on this year, right? And is it a, right, a wish, a want, to be, where are we at, right? So, and it helps people, right, have a little perspective of, oh, there's a bigger plan here, there's a bigger future here.
My should and your should.
Yes.
And then, right, there's several iterations of different groups that we obviously work with stakeholders, so this is just an example. So students that are transitioning, right, we often talk about those kids, students coming into kindergarten or kiddos moving into middle school, kiddos moving into high school, or are those students with additional needs, so ELD, special ed, right, we communicate some different things to those different populations. Our staff, we communicate differently sometimes to our contracted staff versus our internal staff, or maybe our full staff, right? It just depends on what we're communicating. Parents and families, our community, future families, past families, voters, our business community, CTE, CAP, right, internships, and government. So a variety of different key stakeholders for us, we have a lot of them. But that just gives you an idea of, right, when I say who, right, this is a lot of the things I think of.
Is there, maybe you're gonna get to this, but is there a place where, like, who is doing that primary communication? So like,
Mhm.
whether it's coming from you, whether it's coming from principals, like I know that there's been some conversation about what principals will say versus what a PTO board is allowed to say, and how we're allowed to communicate in formal channels and like formalizing some of
I was
that.
gonna say, Christine and I do a lot of communicating amongst the three of us about that, about, right, so that when an issue comes up or if we need to communicate out about something, if it's something that they're just communicating out about, I would just share it with the principals, hey, you know, just so you know, this is knowledge for you, or please share this with our families in your newsletter, in your, you know, email, in whatever form you are communicating with your families. But if there's something, a question, right, the three of us generally work together to try to figure out, okay, who is this best student coming from? Because sometimes, right, it needs to come from the district voice, sometimes it needs to come from the principal's voice, right? It just depends on what the communication is. So there's a lot of behind the scenes communication that happens before we make that decision.
I know before Carrie left, one of the things she said was, during COVID, we got on balance that all of a sudden everything was coming from your seat. And that building, a lot of things that should have been building up communications, the buildings had kind of advocated that, and then didn't really necessarily ask for it back. Right, I know, but what struck her is after it was over, nobody said, oh yeah, I'll do that again. It's like, oh no, this is great, man, I don't have to worry about it at all. So have we explicitly said to the buildings, we're making a conscious effort to move building level communications back to building level to take pressure off you?
We've done, both assistant superintendents have really done a good job with that, I
Okay.
think. In the sense that, they've really worked with me and with them to say, hey, so-and-so, right, this other principal just had this situation, right? We're gonna get that communication from them and we're gonna work together to communicate that out, right? Or it depends on if it's a new, right? If it's a new administrator, I will, obviously, or if it's an administrator that doesn't feel comfortable or has questions, I will always help, right?
Even if you help them, the idea of,
Them doing it.
it's more about what the audience sees, right? What are the messages I see from my principals versus what are the
Correct.
messages I see from you, right? And I just wondered whether we're making a conscious effort to help our building level people recognize, hey, this is part of your job.
Sometimes they're more apt to read it from the principal versus from us.
Right.
You
Well, yeah,
know, so
yeah.
it
Well, and
depends really
sometimes
on-
it's a joint, communication,
Right.
right? So I'll go and I'll meet with go sit with the principal and we'll work together, right?
Right.
Through a document and just say, okay, and then it comes out from the principal, right? It doesn't, a lot of times it doesn't come from me, but I will
Right.
help them with it, just because they're like, I want another set of eyes, I want to make sure that this is, right?
Carl, are you trying to ask if there's like a list that's provided to the principals, like these are the communications you handle, this is what we
No, but just a recognition that there are things that are, if it's a building level issue, don't throw it at
Right.
Ken, right? That's and I just know Carrie was saying about the time she left, it was like, I've got this lint on me, I can't get off because they're like, it's really nice, I don't have to do this anymore. So that's, I'm wondering whether we've had those conversations and whether, as you look, do you feel like, you lived through this, so you saw both ends of that spectrum, do you feel like are we correcting?
I
Like,
think
are we
so.
coming
I
back?
would say absolutely. I
So,
think,
yeah.
I think it was just the nature of the messages we were sending during the
Right.
era of time,
Oh, yeah.
frankly.
I know why it happened.
Yeah.
It's one of these things where I just want to make sure that you, as director of
Mhm.
communications, don't feel like, why is everything coming from me? You know,
No.
so, okay. So-
Yeah, she's not shy about saying it.
No,
Good,
no,
good,
no,
good. I don't want you to be. I mean, that's the whole
And
thing.
I'm happy
is
to
it's-
adapt with them, right?
Yeah, and like you
Say,
said,
hey,
be a
I'll-
person, help them how to do it, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
But helping them to think about, this is the communication that should best come from me, right?
Correct.
So as an example, when a school lost power, where does it go from?
So that's usually the district, right? In the sense that we have
It's almost
multiple,
both.
right? Sometimes, yeah, sometimes
Read it.
both, because,
Kendra will
usually,
send it and
right,
building.
building will also, but usually, it's facilities, right? So facilities is on with cabinet or with Rich and I, myself, right? Letting us know, hey, we have a flood, or we have, you know, no power, or we have
Yeah.
something. So I'm usually on the initial, 4 a.m., midnight, whatever, communication, so, we usually communicate out about that kind of stuff, because it's just, one, it's easier for communication purposes, if it's a bigger thing. If it's smaller, then more building would handle it, or we do it together, like you said, like sometimes we would send something, then the principal will also send something too, so it depends. But, and like, this last one, we had multiple buildings out, so. Easier to deal with one person, kind of knows what's
Yep.
happening. And then I went into a bit of philosophy, right? Obviously, we want to have methods of two-way communication and one-way communication. It's very important. As you guys probably figured out, I am short and sweet, right? To the point, I don't like to send long communications because parents don't have time and they don't want to read, right? If I'm a parent that has kids in 4 different schools, I don't have time. So I try to be mindful of that every time I write. Simplistic, branded, right, good design, break your own bad news. I'm a firm believer in break your own bad news because, right, somebody else is gonna write the story, so write your story first. Use more than one tool, so people need to see something 6+ times before taking action, right? So I think of like marketing, for example, if we're gonna market something, or if we're gonna push something out new that we're doing, you need to tell parents multiple times on multiple platforms, using multiple tools, that you're doing this new thing, whatever this new thing is. So I'm a big believer in that. Social media must be part of the plan. That's a huge, obviously, for younger audiences on social media. So I call the photos and videos, which my team. Yeah.
Good question. The tools, you said there's more than one tools. How often and how do you decide which tools and how do you evaluate, okay, this is going out of?
So I tend to look at the tools in the sense that, right, social media, if you look at social media, for example, like my generation is all on Facebook, right? So if I'm after my generation, I'm gonna go on Facebook, right? If I'm after a younger generation, I will go on Instagram or, right, some of the others. If we're interested in hiring, HR, some HR things, then I'm gonna go on LinkedIn, right? So there's different tools for a variety of different things. But then there's also obviously our newsletter that goes out weekly. We use that all the time. So many parents, right, look at that newsletter, read that newsletter weekly. That's a huge one for us. We use, if we're doing any sort of marketing things or that type, we'll use newspapers, radio, right? Our Troy Times, our supplement that goes out, right, 3 or 4 times a year as well. So there's a variety of different tools that we'll actually get to on the next slide. But some of them are geared toward different audiences, and some of them it's more of a widespread thing. So I try to hit multiple of those, if that makes sense.
So this year, the new thing is the advertisements that kind of come out of community type events or what's available at the school. The new format is wonderful. So, you know how like during the week we would get those emails as parents that say, oh, there's new opportunities in the district. Yeah, except now it's not general for like the whole district. It's the first things that come up, if you look, it's geared towards the schools that your children attend. So you can, and then the bottom portion is like the general community things. So now as a parent, like before, I would have to look through each single advertisement or,
To know.
flyer to know whether it was something that I relevant. Now I just look at the 2 pictures or however many they're really geared from the district, and I personally, all the other stuff I don't. I mean, I don't look at it, if it's not at the.
I unsubscribed from each jar because I was so.
Is that still HR or have it changed?
But it started last week, it's a completely new.
They've been adding some new features in the last month they started, and so I'm curious to see what else out there.
No, but it's great, because now I can more quickly look at it, I don't have to scroll down and look at it.
It's great. And then, right, I always go back to how are we telling the story, right? How are we getting that information out to families or to students or whoever it may be? So as I mentioned, some of these are a variety of different tools that we utilize, right? I mentioned a lot of them. Dr. Machowski does the all the spring updates, right? Welcome back. We have a message that goes out. We do postcards. We do video, phone calls, text messages, committees, a variety of ways that we communicate on things. And it just depends on what we're doing.
We're not sure if we have not yet, but something our principals are raving about is the SMART tool
Yes.
that you've introduced that is, translates the school newsletter into how many different languages? So we have 88, so about 88. Our family, it's far more accessible to our families, and so now people are able to get that message more clearly. So that was something our principals were just raving about, which is really simple and very much more inclusive from the point of view.
This
So
year,
it's
we-
another one to add to our.
Yeah, it's district-wide, But we added, or this year, we asked all principals to send out their newsletter in school. And so they're all, if they aren't already doing it, they're working on becoming proficient in some more, and so that is plus the.
Have we got any feedback from families or?
Oh, we had,
Really?
so
Carefully
Rich
excited.
said to me at some point, last year, he's like, I have to hear one more thing about that stupid newsletter. Because he kept, parents were like, I love the newsletter, oh my God, the newsletter. That was the one thing that I kept hearing about all.
One that
the-
stood out to
But the
me was
translation,
from,
that was there.
and
they
that
had-
stood out to me was Mr. Jansen at Lost,
Correct.
who shared about a parent that had never been able to access the newsletter just because of the language, and this parent was tearful and just so excited. It was
This
just
is the first time,
extremely
so this is the first time I read a communication from my student.
Yeah. So, so
Very
yeah,
impactful.
yeah.
He had several people that,
Mhm.
emails from parents that, because he adopted, when we adopted last year. I offered it up to all principals, I said, if you're interested, please join us, right? Test it out, and so I had a group of principals that were like, yeah, let's test it out. And all of them were like, my parents love it, and they're so excited that they can talk to you.
Literally just
That's what
put
I
it
mean,
out.
it's nice to get
It's
that
so nice.
feedback that
Yeah.
something that was done with a, or, you know, with intention, with a particular purpose actually fulfills that
Mhm.
purpose.
So Kendra, the teachers send out their own version of weekly
Newsletter.
letters and newsletters to their students. Do they use the same platform? or
So
is
right
it-
now, we had several teachers asking, once the principals and once the schools kind of launched, we said, let's get the teachers and the secretaries kind of comfortable, and then once they're comfortable, then we'll work on getting our teachers in that same spot. But we wanna make sure we get the administrators covered and trained and our secretaries as well, and then we'll move into the teachers.
Or
So
PTO
do you-
groups asked, from their point of view, just to be able to.
Do you
Maybe the
import
kids-
your content into that framework? Is that how it works? Or is it a button you add to
It's
whatever you're
really
sending away?
easy. You can literally click the plus sign and it allows you to choose all these options. Do I wanna add a photo? Do I wanna
Yeah, they
add
have just a
a
word.
title? Do I wanna add a
So
box
it's,
with
it's
text?
software to create a newsletter?
You got it.
Okay,
And
that's
then
what I was
you just-
wondering. Okay,
as
so it's,
on the other end, you just click what language and it translates.
Do we have to subscribe to it, is that part?
We pay for it.
Mhm.
And it's the same, it's similar to when we launched our websites this year. You can, our websites are actually, you're able to translate every single page of the website in a variety of different languages, which we hadn't been able to do before either. You could translate certain things on the website, but not the full.
I tried the website, but does it use Google Translate?
No,
Is it
it's called Wedgelot or Weglot.
Okay.
It's a specific translation.
It was
feature.
okay. I used a couple of languages that I knew, so.
Okay.
And it doesn't translate everything, it kind of makes
Okay.
it on, but I think it gets the point
Yeah.
across, so it's fine.
Better than it was.
It was better than what we saw in Google, so that's why we went with that for like as much improvement as we can do. Let's try to do that as much as we can.
It's never static either, we're just trying to make sure that if there's an event or, something simple at the building level where we're trying to be more inclusive and intentional about welcoming other parents, it's really important for us.
So here is one of the first case studies. One of the things that we'll be doing is working through attendance area review process. And with that, I sort of look at this case study as sort of a more in-depth look at something that we're looking to kind of do here shortly. So we begin by meeting with Plant Moran, right, and determining their recommendations. We discuss their recommendations with cabinet and form a committee. So it goes into, right, creating and sending an application. We would send it out through the newsletters. We would then that applications, select and inform the cross-section of the community. And then hold those meetings, right, set up the meetings, hold those meetings, discuss recommendations, determine direction, basically, from those meetings, and determine the outcomes as well, and then communicate those outcomes utilizing a variety of different tools based on what the recommendations are, who it impacts, those, right, I go back to all those pieces, right, who's the audience, when do we need to communicate, how long, how often, how, right, all those things that I brought up.
So if this is something we're starting and working on, going back to Carl's request, can we, you know, get an update on something like this, for example, because this is one of those things, once it gets out into the community, people are gonna be talking about it, and if we don't have a plan ahead of time, how to get ahead of it. So I think this would be a good one to even lay out for us.
The communication plan within this, right?
And then obviously, once we do all of those different pieces, right, you're gonna obtain feedback, right? Constantly obtaining feedback and changing what you're doing as you go.
In that particular example, it's having survived on those. Thinking about that, I think you're right, Amina, to be able to lay out the process and allow the community to be involved in the messenger to the board to inform versus as administrators, we're a part of that committee preference. So I think laying out the, exactly as Kendra's kind of pointed out, just the steps and the who is really important to that process before it begins, so people understand the expectation. I think it's been very successful. You know, instead of us saying it, it's implicit and we're being intentional with how we're learning to do that.
The other reason I like it is often you get into something you might survive something. You can be 3/4 of the way through it, and then someone doesn't like what the recommendations look like, and say, well, I didn't know anything about it, right? And to be able to pull it and say, here was the communications plan, these are all the places we communicated, this is the timetable, we agreed to all this before we started. I think really that's the
And you
great.
should have been involved here, and here, to be able chance to do
Right,
all of that. So
there
that's
was an
important.
opportunity, and that opportunity was, but to say, we didn't do this, there was no conspiracy, right? We weren't hiding this from anybody, this is what we do, so I think having that type of communication plan moving forward is really helpful. Because the other thing it allows you to do is if you put it up for us, we can stop and say, okay, we're kind of thinking about the ways we may identify, have you thought about adding this or this, right? To see if we think that might make sense, so.
And that's part of it, is it evolves, right? It's sort of a living,
Yeah.
breathing thing, right? As you go through it, you may say, oh, we need to add this step that we didn't consider, right? Or an outcome of something, maybe, you know, another additional thing that you didn't originally have in the plan, right? That's very important. But yeah, that is sort of a deeper dive, and then obviously this one is a big overview, right? So it's building a new Smith Middle School, obviously one thing which is a needs assessment, and a site plan and pass a bond, right? Those are definitely not just one bullet items, but it gives you an idea of the process, right? Where there's many communications, right? So there's multiple people involved in each of those bullets, right? So passing the bond, showcasing the renderings, groundbreaking, right? We use a variety of different tools, and a variety of different audiences. The building process, right? So we're using several of our tools to capture some of the building process and get that out to families. Communicate moving and transportation plans, right? So the families and the larger community, because it will impact them as well. Grand opening, right? We'll use a variety of tools there. Smith families and larger community as well. There's lots of people that maybe went to Smith originally would like to be involved, and previous teachers or previous administrators, right? Just right.
Curious people in the city
Correct.
who agree to give us $500 million.
That's right.
May want to see what
They may wanna
that
see
money
what
built,
they-
right? That's.
But then it goes back to that audit review and feedback loop, right? And you learn from what you do, right? Your next wave of those instructors. So obviously, I know, like I said, all of those are very extensive, but it gives you kind of just a brief overview of,
Thank you. Thank you for being strategic.
That's part of my job.
No, but I can see places where you lean into this, like I see the evidence of really that you are being thoughtful and willing to do that, so.
Great. Okay.
Carl?
Yes,
Carl?
yes.
Question, from Kendra, besides, going faster, a sense of urgency, how does this change for crisis communication?
I don't think a lot of it changes all that much for crisis communication. in just that, right? It's a lot faster, and there's a lot more people involved in it's a lost situation, as Patel said. And a lot more people involved right up front, right? And for the long haul, not that they aren't, but they're probably a lot more involved for the long haul, just like myself, so.
Tell our story. Great.
Great. Okay, well, Rich is away on family business, so guess we get to give the superintendent an update.
Well, this one's really brief, so I'll easy on you. In terms of staffing, I had a chance just quickly to talk with John beforehand. I think we're at 32 teachers that we hired, and excited to report that outside of some critical areas, we do have plans in terms of our special ed programming, specifically with our ASC teachers, but we do have folks in a position where we are working towards certification in some cases, and we have a plan in place for those areas. So we had an amazing start in terms of our hiring. We have John and his team have done a wonderful job in terms of attracting and recruiting our staff. So excited to report that we have, we are in areas where not staffed, very few of them, we have a plan in place to help those staff get certified in those pieces that way. Any questions on staffing? I was just gonna
I would say what are the critical?
And how many?
I know
It's
ASC
the
newsletters
ASC,
too,
and I
right?
think we're around 4, right, John, that we have some areas that are, we're working with.
4 areas or 4 positions?
4 positions.
That we're improvising in?
Yeah.
And they're all ASD?
Level 4.
Level 4, yeah, so this essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So going hand in hand with enrollment, then we're excited to be able to, we've talked a lot about right sizing and making sure that we're right sizing in terms of enrollment. Those pieces, our enrollment team, just in kindergarten alone, we've enrolled about 800 students. And so probably about 1,100 over the, all the different grade levels and things like that, including preschool. So it's been a really busy summer around here. We're trending in just the right direction. We didn't want to wait until we get the exact enrollment piece until now. We're backing also students out who have left the district and still enrolling. I think we have 35 more students to enroll in totality once our paperwork is in from those families and things like that. So our enrollment team has been extremely busy. We have a couple of staff members there, but we've had a really busy summer. Been a successful one. Our kindergarten class is right around 800, which is about 30 more students than we had this previous year. So it's exciting. So the largest pre-K class that we've had.
30 more than it
The
was
previous
planned
year.
or the previous
No,
year?
I'm not giving you as
Not
high
that
number
number.
yet. Yeah. We have to back out all the FTE and things like that, as you remember. So right now, we'd be kind of taking a guess that would be out there, yeah.
When's October count?
Is it the 5th? October counting.
First Wednesday.
Yeah, first Wednesday in October, yeah.
So that's after our next workshop, so we won't have that number until November, basically.
You're
Well,
right.
we'll get it.
We'll get it in the,
Second.
yeah, in June, so second, thank you, Christine.
October 2nd.
But our workshop is the first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the day after the workshop, unfortunately.
Because it's usually the day after the
Yeah.
workshop.
Okay.
So that's that.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Okay, under other, we have, I think what we need to do is we need to figure out how many slots we want to approve for the 3 different conferences this year. And it's okay if, we kind of do a tentative count, it's okay if we shift or whatever, but we need to set reservations. And I think, Judy, because I think you don't have to know how many slots she reserved.
I don't.
For MASC reserved for all.
For everyone, okay, that's everyone.
And then, if I recall, the Advocacy Institute was 3.
We need to know who needs to be delegates.
Right, and that one we need, is that 3 and an alternate, or what is it? 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need 4
For MA.
for MASB, yeah.
I'll be there. so.
I'll be there, so that's 2.
Gary.
Gary will be there, that's 3.
I'm coming.
Matt will be there, Rena, so who wants to?
So I might not be there Thursday, so.
Well, it looks like it's our friend Matt then.
So, is that
Yeah.
Now you're a pro.
Yeah. Okay, and then do we need an alternate, do we have to list the alternate, or? Nancy, are you gonna go?
Gary's one.
I think so, although I don't feel very in control of my life these days,
Yeah,
so.
how about if I put you as the alternate?
Yeah, put me as the alternate, I mean, if I can, and all's quiet on the home front, I will go.
Okay. Do you have those? You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, she's recorded, okay. And then, for Advocacy Institute, that's, we've got 3.
I think it was 3 they know. Remember that? I thought it was initially she put Vital, myself, and then
we did names that were not up for election.
So-
I think we made.
I plan on going this year, and I'll put it in my calendar, so I build a little bit.
So I think we did Vital, Nat, and me.
Yeah, because I skipped last year and that's why.
And I didn't go last year.
And we don't need the names, we just had to agree to that.
But yeah,
Approve for 3. Okay. So we're okay for 3 on that. And then the annual conference in Atlanta.
Who's gonna do one this year, so too. So I'll just-
Yeah, I know, that's the, what did we do last year?
I think that's true. For
Last year it was the 4 of us, Nancy, the 4 of us went,
Okay.
to New Orleans.
Why don't we set for 4, we can always do an alteration later if we need to.
Yeah.
4 is probably all right, that's usually about. So. Okay. That takes us to other. Matt, any other?
I'm just happy for simple.
You're just happy because lost that power, that's all. Watson Larson lost that power, so.
It's been great to see a lot of people. So I'm just happy to be back. Have some kids in school.
How about you?
I have a couple. So I had a parent ask me, who also happens to be a math tutor, what if any opportunities, now we've had a year of the new math curriculum, we're going into now the second full year, what opportunities are there gonna be, for community type feedback in terms of the math, maybe after this school year? You know, once it's a full 1 year after the initial year, so, that was, and nobody may have an answer to that at this point, but the question was, is there gonna be an opportunity for community feedback, to that? About their
Oh, I
individuals.
couldn't hear what Amina's saying.
Amin was asking if there would be some type of community feedback for the math
Opportunity.
opportunity after the first full, so after last year?
No, after this school year.
So after 2 years?
Yeah, after 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
And it's something we can certainly talk with our teaching and learning team about. I do think more generally that we would like to foster an environment where we have kind of an ongoing communication about how their individual children are doing and that sort of thing. It's something that we're certainly always in review of. I know that Kate and the team, in particular at the secondary level, has had many opportunities to talk about like algebra night. There's different various like entry points for families to have just more of those casual conversations. But we can certainly talk
I
about.
think this
ways
is
to be
more of like,
formalized.
more formal feedback as opposed to, an administrator in one of those nights or teacher talking to a bunch of people and not necessarily, yeah, so that was the question that I got was, are there gonna be any, I guess, more formal type, opportunities?
Communication or
Feedback opportunities, yeah.
Okay. We can talk through that. In terms of the ultimate goal, just so I understand, is about improvement of the program.
That, to me, that's,
Okay.
what would it be? So even, for example, I know the geometry is being piloted this year, and it's a
Mhm.
completely online curriculum. And so, there probably, I would think that there should be some type of, other than just feedback coming from the teacher view, at some point, there should be feedback from students, from parents, trying to, to see if, the curriculum itself might be good, but there might be opportunities to figure out how additional supports maybe come home. Because so many things, especially now, are going to completely completely on online resources, and so if you don't have a book you can print out, you have a book you can get. So I think that was, the question was very specific to the math curriculum in middle school, but would be if there will be some formalized process where there will be some feedback from students and from parents.
Well, the buses are rolling, and, no, it's good, and, great sound of new recess for, our elementary school, since I'm so close to an elementary school, has already started, and that excitement, is generated in the classroom. I know, from the playground to the classroom, we're gonna have a great year. That's it.
I have a couple of topics. This is mostly from the parents that have asked questions. A couple of parents have asked me about physics, chemistry half-year thing. And there is some confusion. Some of the students are getting both physics and chemistry in the same semester. Sometimes they're getting a huge break and they're getting later. So they would do chemistry and physics in the same semester, and then they get an entire break with the optional stuff in the second semester, and they do Chem 2 a year later. And then there's concern about losing out on learning and stuff like that. So I just wanted to understand what is the process and how is the scheduling happening with this half-year thing. This is come from two parents, so that's why I'm worried. Not worried, I wanted to find out.
Sure.
Okay.
And I also got a question about chemistry from a parent who's done the year.
Christine, I think that would answer that, or you want
I mean, I can give a general answer, and I think if there's follow-up, we can certainly talk more, and I can provide more offline, but, our curriculum for chemistry and physics is compartmentalized into semesters. We talked about that quite a bit with Marie here, I know, that last year and the year before. For students scheduling, they can choose to take, some students can choose to take both in one semester, or they can take them over the course of 2 semesters. I think that, depending on how the scheduler ran and what those 2 particular outliers are, there might have been something that forced one or the other based on a specific other course they took. And so that's part of working with those 4,000 high school kids, is figuring out which one needs to go where. So what I would suggest is if they feel like it's overloading them by having 2 in one semester and none in the other, that they speak with their counselor to be able to do that. But for the sequential Chem 1, Chem 2, Physics 1, Physics 2, we had a pretty lengthy conversation with our science teachers about that building block for them, and they felt confident having them be able to take the Chem 1 and the Chem 2 and the Physics 2 the following year, and not having to have them back to back. So that wasn't a deal breaker in the conversation as they were building out that curriculum and working toward it. So that was a very open conversation we had.
And then, and it's, so only the 1 semester of physics and the 1 semester of chemistry is required to graduate.
Correct.
Which is why it's different now.
Yeah.
And students are not required to take Chem 1 and Chem 2 in 2 separate years. So pretty much like everything else that parents kind of look at 4 years and schedule it out, there is a way that you can get both in
So
a year.
what I heard is, Chem 1 and Physics 1, and we can take this offline, this is too much detail. Is that let's take it offline. It's going to be easier that way. The other question I have, this is actually preschool playground, and this is parent, for ADA compliance, do they need to be able to access the preschool, the playgrounds from outside the building? Also, accessibility, or it only has to be inside? This parent was complaining that they're not able to bring a wheelchair in from outside the building to the playground.
Not sure. Or
So
you're
there's
talking
a big
about the
curve up there in the
preschool.
preschool playground outside, and there's apparently a
Have they
big
talked to
curve.
you about it?
Are they trying to use it
You mean
during
after
hours or
hours?
after hours?
I do not know that either.
Yeah, that might be.
But I wasn't sure about the ADA compliance.
Accessible from the roadside.
I mean,
That's what the parents said, I've not checked into it,
Yeah.
so I can go and check into it.
Again, I'll follow up with Aaron.
The other question, I can follow up later. website, is the website up and running? For a while, I couldn't get to see the teachers and get that information and all of that.
So when we, with Final Site this summer, we were supposed to be given the back end of the websites to build. They have to build the framework of it, and then we have to go in and basically take one site and duplicate it, right, a bunch of different times, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and then build each one individually. And so we were supposed to be given that July 1st. We were given that August 1st, so a whole month. And if you know anything about building a website, it takes about a month or two to build one, and we're building 26. So we're behind where we'd like to be, obviously, but they're all up and running. The goal is for them to all be kind of uniform at this point, and then slowly, once we do a take on where everything's at to make sure everything's correct, then we're gonna start building each one individually a little bit more specific. So some of the things like directories and things are not up to date. We're also having an issue connecting on the back end with Final Site, and some of the Life Touch and some other things are having some connection issues, so we're working through some of that right now to try to get those to be able to populate automatically, so we're not doing them one by one, right? As you can imagine, that is lengthy if you do them one by one. But I really have to give a ton of credit to Melissa Verdun and Diana have done a fabulous job just spending, right? I mean, working overtime, working a ton of hours to try to get them up and ready. So, yeah, we're getting there. Work in progress, yeah. They'll be beautiful when they're done, so I just am appreciative of everyone's patience, so.
Do you have a target deadline for full completion?
No, we didn't.
Well, yeah, it's not gonna be yesterday, that's, I mean, a realistic timetable here.
We didn't, initially, we kind of said into the late fall, we thought we'd be done, so maybe that's even a little bit later fall, early winter.
Well, you know, I'm wondering whether we indicate to the public that this is under construction until, you know, we anticipate the final build being completed by January 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
So the public knows that it's not done, because we're getting complaints, reading, I've seen comments about.
Maybe that goes on the weekly newsletter.
It
goes on the
has.
website.
It's gone out a couple times.
It goes on the homepage of the website.
Yeah.
So
Just to have a banner.
Pardon our
on the top.
dust.
Yeah.
Pardon our dust.
Right.
You know, and
Maybe
then
pop up.
if we beat that deadline, then good for us, but it will delight everybody. But let's set a realistic expectation and let people know, we know that
The
it's not
timeframe.
done. Because you'll kind of nip that in the bud, right,
I
in
will.
terms of complaints coming.
Well, and we want to get also, one of the things that we really want to do is once we get it pretty set and consistent across the board, we really want to get input from the community and the staff about what's working, what's not working, and do we need to change anything before we, you know, go too much deeper into it, because we really want to get that feedback, right? If something feels out of place, or, oh, we don't really like that, so we may be sending out a survey about, to get some feedback, or using PTO Council for some of that feedback as well.
Nancy, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Anything you want to add?
I have, just one question. I see that, and I guess it's really for Kendra, and you're talking about the website, Doug Teets set out to the business roundtable, kind of the dates for the year and, you know, some information, but he attached a link for a sneak peek of the, Career Accelerator Program website. Is that going to be domiciled on the district website, or is that a separate link, or how does that?
So in the interim,
Website?
can you hear me, Nancy?
Not really well.
Okay.
She's all the way across the room. She's very trusting of my microphone. Okay. She's come closer. Okay, go ahead.
So in the interim, while we were building the website on the back end, Doug basically built a link to a page so that we could house some of that CAP information for businesses in the interim. So basically, it will look similar. We're going to use the similar contents of it,
But, we'll probably have a few changes to it just because it'll be on our site as opposed to that one page that he has live. But we wanted to have something for businesses because we did have several businesses that were still, reaching out and contacting us about it, so.
Great, thanks, because it really, I think it's nice work, and
Yeah, it is.
testimonials and the annual report, so kudos for that.
Okay. Good, anything else? You?
That's it for me.
Abby Wilson?
Kudos to the team for their flexibility last week, and, Athens hosting a football game that they weren't supposed to host. It was a lot of, just really, a lot of goodwill and flexibility, and, storms are inconvenient and no one wants it, but just the kudos to the flexibility of everybody in doing that. And again, thank you, Natalie, you and your team for everything, for helping people start the school year with so much confidence. Hearing like really positive feedback from Webb and Leap and the way that really de-escalated anxiety. So kudos to all the people who did those programs. And then also, last time you had mentioned that Natal, Nancy, and I got to see the first 3 quarters of Undivide Us. Farmington Community, they're showing it at the library on September the 10th. So if you had wanted to see Undivide Us and we're out of town in, when was that, August? So September 10th, they're showing it in Farmington. That's curriculum night for the high schools. One can't go to that.
Is that the public library, from the public library or the school?
It's not with the schools, it's with the community. So if you go to the Undivide Us website, or I can.
September 10th is just freed up, so we had to move curriculum night to the 18th for the high schools. So
Oh,
just
well.
FYI.
There you go.
That was part of my
Okay.
updates. Thanks, Nicole.
So these updates are on need-to-know basis.
But anyway, if you want to go see that in Farmington, that will be on September 10th.
And then the only thing I've got here is we've scheduled the next, and I'll make sure I got the date right again, for the next coffee talk with Board of Education members, and that's October 9th, right? Is that what we decided? We moved it a week?
Or is it the Tuesday?
I
Is it
proposed
the
a
8th?
couple.
Or do we go to the 8th?
Well, I proposed another date. David proposed a few dates, and I don't know if you saw his. and
I didn't
then-
see David, so. I
Okay,
don't
David
see that.
proposed a few, and then I said this would be a good one, but I don't remember which one that was.
I think it's the 8th. Okay. So that one, and so that is Nicole and me, and I didn't know if you wanted to be part of that or not.
I'm gonna try.
Okay, all right, so 2 or 3 of us will cover that one, so that's our next scheduled coffee talk. And we were talking about this, saying it would be nice to do this one in a building, and particularly do one in a elementary with new furniture. So
It was
we.
previously flooded. And
Then we decided we'd go one step further, we go to one that was previously flooded but on a main road. So we're gonna try to do it at Hamilton.
Yeah.
And we thought maybe we could get some future ready learning environment overviews for people if they wanna come before we have a general conversation, give them something fun to look at. I think there's probably some general curiosity about how does the flooded out building look now? So there's probably some parents and other people who are probably curious about that, would like to see it. So that's our plan right now. So I think that's the 8th, but
I think it's.
yeah.
Kendra, can I go back to curriculum then just for a second? It might have already been in the weekly newsletter, but is that something that you could put in the weekly newsletter saying, hey, curriculum night's coming up, elementary, because I as a parent was trying to find it in the millions of emails that I got, and I figured out the middle school one, I couldn't figure out the high school date, so.
We'll put all of them in there.
Okay, I think that would be useful, so, because they haven't started yet, so that would be.
But they start tomorrow, so.
Oh, they, for elementary, oh yeah, for elementary, yes, yeah.
So that, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elementary parents tend to.
We were excited to share that our curriculum nights are for the first time ever on the same night, so all of them, in terms of level. So tomorrow our elementary schools will start in all of our buildings, and then on the 5th we'll have preschool. The the next week, we'll have, following week on the 12th, we'll have our middle schools, and then September 18th, as I mentioned, will be for our high schools. So excited to have that alignment for parents and just have a lot of feedback with things all over the place. So trying to really shape that up and firm up
It's
those
kind of
things.
interesting that it was not always that way, but it
Sure is.
It makes sense.
Something so simple, right? All right.
Just like the calendar.
Exactly. And then, just really briefly, we have, some updates that I will communicate about the 4 running playgrounds that are to be done. I know some of you had questions about that progress, so we'll have some specifics on that.
I know that's rain dependent.
Yes.
So we have, right now, Union is done, and that's it?
Right. Yeah.
Union and, okay,
Yeah,
Union,
and Morris
okay.
is coming along as well. Morris has, their kindergarten, playground done, so it
Okay.
looks great. A lot of them are in part, but, we should be done in the next few weeks here, so again, weather dependent.
So if I want to go see one, I should go to Tribune?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
okay.
you can drive by and see it from there. It sounds good. Kids are very excited.
Say, we're saying don't go on my playground. You can look at it from
Yeah.
It's good enough for you.
That's active.
Stay on the road, so, okay, good, all right. Do you want to, I was going to, I'm gonna hand this out to everybody that I was supposed to give you, ages ago. But, the question is, do you want to do this? We can either, we can pair up or try up. You want to, one, take one of them, pass one down, and especially without, you get one too, it's okay.